The Florida State Seminoles score again in the transfer portal.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Florida State, all things transfer portal, where they stand. I want to do an overview today because they still have a ways to go, and there's some still good players that could end up going to Florida State as they navigate, but this is a good juncture. Most teams are done, so we can do a little comparison. That will be for the majority of the show, but we start with another key addition to the Florida State offensive line room, Joshua Raymond. Come on down from Vanderbilt. He is a player that redshirted last year, former Under Armour All-American. He is from the Orlando area, so he's coming back home to the Sunshine State. He commits to Herb Hand and the Noles. This is a young man that can play guard. He can possibly play tackle, might even be able to develop into a center. Give or take 300 pounds. He has the athleticism and the footwork to be a guy that you could pull with, play zone. It really doesn't matter. Had an opportunity to look at some recent film of him when he was at Vanderbilt in practice, and I was pretty impressed. I didn't expect a lot because most freshman offensive linemen technically have a mile to go, if you want to be really honest, and perhaps even more for some of them, because technique along the offensive line is a lifelong learning skill. That being the case, I like Raymond because he's quite honestly exactly what I talked about they needed, and that is another offensive lineman to go with ElyneMatthews, who they just got, that is versatile. If you take nothing else from this podcast, note that in totality, the sixth transfer portal offensive lineman for the Florida State Seminoles is versatile. Could he play tackle? Absolutely. Guard? Absolutely. And again, perhaps at some point he learns to be the pivot man at center. That's a position I'm going to talk about a little bit more later in the show, but Herb Hand likes to cross-train. So let's break down why this is important. They've gotten 4 guys that they brought in for spring ball. Pettis, Pettitbone. They did a good job. They had some injuries, etc. And that's why I said, while 5 would be okay, 6 would be best. When guys start getting hurt, you just don't know how soon they're going to get back to the fold. It can be hard. Sometimes injuries just continually happen to the big guys. It is what it is. So they get another versatile guy. But what does he do best now? As far as just watching him on film, Joshua Raymond has the ability to get out in space. I think he does really well. If you want him to scoop block, which means you move right or left, get your arm from the backside up underneath the guy, and you reach through, he's got the athleticism to do that. That's more of an NFL skill, in my opinion, than it is a college skill. Most college guys are pretty average at that. But Joshua Raymond has the athleticism to do that. And finally, he has a frame to change into not just a power player, not just an athlete, but a guy that can do a little bit of everything. I think he'll be more powerful and be better straight ahead in long term, but I would say that about anybody. But right now, he's already got the frame to do that a little bit. In another year in Florida State strength program, and I expect Josh to be one of the first guys, if not the first guy off the bench at guard this year, you could see him be a starter for multiple years. And Florida State actually formulate a depth chart with younger players. Now, on the Portal podcast earlier today, I talked about this in relation to something that, ironically, Deion Sanders is doing at Colorado, and that's he's taken a few more younger guys in the portal. As it relates specifically to Florida State on the offensive line, I'm not talking about their whole roster because they're nowhere near what Colorado is in terms of how they build their roster. But they have to do this a little bit more. So the last two guys have not one, not two, not three, but 4 years of eligibility. ElyneMatthews comes in from Rutgers. He had enrolled this past January there, transfers to Florida State. And now you get Joshua Raymond coming in from Vanderbilt. He played there last year, but redshirted. So he's got 4 years to play for. That's 2 additional players with all the experienced guys they got. And Florida State signed a pretty nice offensive line class. Some guys with some high ceilings, some risk, but some pretty good athletes. This is the beginning of what Florida State needs up front. Not saying it's the end. This recruiting cycle, and we'll get into that a little bit more probably next week. I want to see how the official visits line up. There's some big weekends for every school, May 16th for some, May 30th for others, et cetera, et cetera. Once we get into definitely the middle of May, I'll be talking about it constantly. Who's visiting where and why. But for now, just note, Florida State's offensive line recruiting is on the uptick. I want to see another tackle added to that room quicker than what I would in most school situations. But tackle's the only spot I'm a little nervous about with Florida State moving forward, pretty much on the offense in general. I think they'll be okay. Everywhere else, we'll figure out quarterback in time. That's another story that I'll touch on just a little bit later. But Florida State looks a lot better in their recruiting efforts. They're getting the right guys to come into campus. Now, who commits? I don't know. To that point, I just want to ask some questions of you as Florida State fans, and I'm going to answer these as I go along too. Got a long list here, several questions that I think are really important in regards to how Florida State's using the portal and what would you do differently if you would do anything at all. So here's number one. So far, has Florida State met its portal needs? For me, that's actually a yes and a no, because they had more needs in other schools than, say, like Ohio State or Texas or whatever. They weren't trying to add to 1 or 2 positions. They had something at almost every single position they needed. Here's an example. They lost both their kickers. They lost their quarterback that was expected, like Luke Roman transferred out, and they lost DJ Uyunglele. He's done, so they couldn't have brought him back even if they wanted to. They lost a ton across the board, everywhere in between quarterback to kicker. Offensive linemen, they lost like their center. They lost their left tackle. They lost a lot of players there, and they even lost Joshua Farmer, Azariah Thomas, NFL players on the defensive side of the ball. So with all those players gone, I knew it was going to take a little longer. To this point, I'm okay with where they are, but here's the list that I need to see. It would be still great if they could get another defensive end. Is that realistic at the level Florida State wants? I don't know. I am very happy that they got Wilson, though, the corner. Jeremiah Wilson coming back home to the state of Florida. That's important. They needed a DB there. Be nice if they could get another safety, but we'll see. On the defensive line, they got another tackle. That'd be great. That's not a major need. And at linebacker, they've done a pretty good job in general to date. I don't think they have anything to worry about, especially since they got Stephon coming in from Nebraska. Offensive side, it's the obvious. Quarterback's taken care of. Running back, they've got a visit coming up. We've talked about that a little bit. But overall, I think they're okay at running back. I don't know the whole situation injury-wise, but I think they're in a pretty good spot. But receiver is the big concern. You lost not 1, not 2, but 3 guys to the portal. That's a lot. So Florida State has to find a way to do something about Hakeem. He's decided, I believe, he's going to Colorado, if I remember right. But whatever the case may be, Florida State has to find some pieces at that spot, and they probably also need a tight end. But the biggest one originally was O-line, and they got 6. Florida State has done a tremendous job of finding offensive linemen. I thought it was going to be hard to get anything else out of the portal in the spring. They did far better than what I thought. So, again, they've gotten the numbers, they've gotten the balance with the offensive line. Joshua Raymond is the latest piece. When we come back, we're going to break down the portal a little bit more with where Florida State's at, what's next here on Locked on Seminoles. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to go. Divide into hundreds of premium titles, including EA Sports College Football 25 or Call of Duty, as easily as you stream your favorite shows. If you're not a gamer, there's always the opportunity to use your Fire Stick 4K for about anything else, because I use a Fire Stick constantly. YouTube TV. Go to all the different things that anything that could be possible with Game of Thrones. I've watched it. Of course, that's under HBO, but there's still other things that talk about it. And you can go into all the different free apps by using it to anything that you would use for streaming. It's going to be there on your Fire Stick. So head over to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, second generation, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, first and second generation, and Fire TV Cube, third generation. Let's get back on track with the key question about the transfer portal. Just overall question. Do Florida State fans feel comfortable with the depth chart, A, with Thomas Castellanos running the show, and B, if Thomas gets hurt this year, let's say early on, and he has to miss any extended period of time? So again, are you comfortable with Thomas Castellanos as the Florida State quarterback? And then for whatever reason, if he has to miss more than a game, how do you feel about it? My take is this. Castellanos is a great fit for Gus Malzahn's offense. I think he'll do very well. Especially, again, as I mentioned in the last segment, if the Noles get more receivers. They got too many young guys you got to rely on right now. Need at least one more experienced player to go with Deuce Robinson and Squirrel White. Conservatively, you need at least one more. But I digress. So I'm okay with Thomas, but if he gets hurt, I don't feel good. And here's why. Florida State does not have an experienced backup quarterback that is a true all-around freak athlete. In Gus Malzahn's offense, you don't need a mobile quarterback. You need a freak. He wants his quarterback to run as much, if not more, than about any other coach in the major P4. Did they have that guy that is experienced? And the answer is no. Now, I'm not taking anything away like Sperry, what do I know of him, just as an example. I'm just going to use him for the moment. He's pretty athletic and he's pretty strong, but I still don't think he's quite to that level. But you can make it work with that. He's used a couple quarterbacks similar when he was at Auburn and had a lot of success. But the premier opportunities for what Gus does begins and ends with a quarterback that can move. And I mean break guys down and make them miss. So if Thomas Castellanos misses significant time, that gives me some pause. Wide receiver, how good is it at Florida State beyond those two? Talk about Deuce Robinson and Squirrel White. And I have no idea. Anybody wants to tackle this question, go ahead. But I thought about it the last couple of days, and I don't really know how to go about putting it into context. It's not that I don't like the talent. I do, a lot. But that doesn't mean it's ready to play now. In Florida State, like any other teams, got to rotate guys. They're going to have guys that get bumps and bruises that might play half a game in terms of the reps. Even though they play in all four quarters, we got to limit his reps today. And then, of course, you have the unfortunate players out of the game, can't play today, sprained ankle, he's gone. What happens when you're playing redshirt freshmen at a couple of spots, like if Deuce has to miss 2-3 games? That gives me some pause. Florida State secondary, how would you define it? To me, it's the I don't know what's going on question. I thought it was going to be the best position on the roster this year because they had so many quality players in terms of athleticism, in terms of players I'd seen personally, in terms of some pretty good production. I'm not going to single anybody out here, but they have so many guys that I liked athletically. I just figured it would take care of itself. But then there were rumblings that multiple guys maybe didn't take a step forward this spring. Then I thought about it. New defensive coordinator. Tony White, they're not going to run as much, at least I don't think, man coverage is what they did before. Here's the catch besides learning the new scheme under White. It's just par for the course, but zone defense is oftentimes complex, especially in today's era, because teams are running bunch formations and they do everything in their power to get what I call freebies. Every team does this. They run bunch, they cross, they're just flat out hoping that two DBs take one receiver and one receiver scot-free and you get a touchdown. If you're in man, there's still a chance that can happen, but overall, you have some basic rules. In zone, depending on what you're doing, you should be able to get that, but guys that haven't played in it, especially if they're going to run any match, and that's a whole set of podcasts on what a match defense is in today's college football world. That's a Saban term, but any of that stuff that they're running, I'm guessing might give some of the other players at Florida State that I thought were going to be good this year in the secondary, maybe that's causing some concern, and that's why they brought in Wilson. They're still possibly looking at some other DBs. This gives me concern because in Tony White's defense, he runs three safeties, and it's a little bit more complex from what I can tell. If some of these key players that are super athletic didn't pick it up, and you're going against Bama's offense in game one, that can be fireworks in the wrong direction. That gives me a lot of pause. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm not, but I am concerned about the secondary. But as many of you know, if you watch Locked On Seminoles at all, I am 100% a glass half empty kind of guy. You got to prove it to me. But this is a new defense. There's more complexity to it from what I can tell. And it's just from man to zone. Like they're going to be playing a different way, and you got different guys coming up with different answers. Got double the amount of attention to detail probably to figure some of this stuff out because you got different coaches coaching you. It's going to be a long summer. They're going to have to hit that playbook. Next, the biggest transfer portal addition for Florida State is who? You could say Thomas Castellanos, but that's low-hanging fruit. Take the quarterback position out of the battle. For me, I'll give you a second to think about this, but this is an easy one now, and it's probably going to surprise some people. I've got Pettibone, the offensive lineman that transferred from Wake Forest. He's going to play center. By all accounts, players at Florida State, Mike Norvell himself, and just the knowledge that I understand that center's hard. Plus, where would Florida State have been without Mo the last couple of years? And he's gone. He's moved on after his Florida State career. He's no longer at the center. Not having a veteran center this year would be rough. Luke Pettibone coming in, competing well, doing well in terms of like helping other players, grasping the system, and gaining the knowledge from Herb Hand so he could pass it along to some of the other younger guys as well as the other transfers who are all veterans is important. If you're not good at center, and you're obviously trying to completely rebuild this offensive line for multiple reasons. Number one, they were terrible. Secondly, they lost the majority of their players. It was a very valuable addition to get Luke Pettibone. I didn't really think about it that way, maybe even a week or two ago, but the more I dug into it, especially on offense, and again, take the quarterback out of it. It's always, the answer is always quarterback, so that's boring. Take the quarterback out of it, Luke Pettibone. If I had to go with a second one, it's really hard. I hate saying this, but I would lean Deuce Robinson now, and for all the wrong reasons. Number one, I was hoping they'd have a definitive number 2 receiver after spring because the players they had, somebody would develop. I thought it would be Hakeem Williams. He transferred. You had the Jaylen Brown situation. And you've got a bunch of young guys. It sounds like they've all had their days, but there's no definitive answer beyond Squirrel White being a good slot. They don't have a true flanker that's definitive yet. They've got a lot of guys in the mix, including Jayden Boggs, a true freshman, but they need somebody proven out there. So I would like to see another guy to at least come in and compete with Boggs. If he wins the job, still great. He's a good kid. But I need to see another proven guy come in. That's rough. If Florida State doesn't get it, it could be very difficult this next year. Who is the biggest portal sleeper for Florida State? This might have been the hardest thing because Florida State needs so many guys to come in for lack of a better term, and just be flat out good right out of the gate? I'm not sure I know the answer to that. You could look at it a lot of ways. Maybe you want to say, well, it could be a player that is going to play multiple roles. Williams, the defensive end for Nebraska, Stephon Johnson for Nebraska. There are a lot of players. Probably Stephon is where I would go, but it's a short change deal because what about Wilson, the young man they just got to transfer in from Houston? Again, he's from the state of Florida, played at Osceola down in Kissimmee. I'm not sure how you would define it, but there's enough guys to at least consider. You could even throw Squirrel White in there again because he's going to catch a ton of passes. Probably won't have a huge average, but he should be a very, very valuable tool for the Florida State Seminoles. When we come back, I'm going to ask a couple more questions, but we're going to finish up on what you think Florida State's capable of based on how they're trending. I'll explain when we get back here on Locked On Seminoles. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all the money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track, and that's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so you can stop just managing money and start building your wealth. All in one. Instead of juggling all kinds of different apps for your finances, you can use Monarch Money to check on your finances, spending, and even plan your long-term goals. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. All right, let's get to a couple questions and then just talk about the trend. I want your overall thoughts on Florida State here in just a minute. This is a big one. Is Miami widening the gap between themselves and Florida State in talent? Take your Florida State glasses off for a second. I'm sure many of you see what Florida State gets, whether you're on Instagram or Facebook or whatever it is. Are the Hurricanes widening the talent gap with Florida State? Regardless of your answer, why? For me, the answer is yes. It's not by a lot, but they've spent a little more money specifically at spots, not to just get depth, but they're getting really good players that set them up for next year at a couple of spots. They just got Shamar Brown, the guy from North Dakota State, good running back. Florida State was looking at him a little bit, and Florida State might get Gavin Sawchuk. So 6 one way, half dozen the other. But Florida State isn't necessarily in the same spot Miami is at a lot of spots, like especially O-line. Miami's offensive line is another stratosphere from Florida State. So them building depth like that, and this is a kid that's got 3 more years of eligibility, that's a good spot for them. They've gotten better at DB, way better, especially getting Xavier Lucas. That's a kid Florida State would have done really well to get. He transferred from Wisconsin. I think the gap has been widened. They've hit some needs, but they've also built depth a little bit better at key spots. The only thing, and this is so ironic, Miami and Florida State are in the same boat at one spot, and that's receiver. They're both short. That's why it's not a bigger gap. I am shocked that Miami hasn't hit higher end in the transfer portal at wide receiver. Now, they've got some good young guys coming up like JoJo. JoJo Trader's a kid Florida State recruited very hard. But they're not where they need to be at wide receiver. They're not even close. They didn't plan very well for that. So, yes, I think Florida State's fallen a little bit further behind, but the way they're approaching the portal and adding pieces, I still agree with it. They went O-line heavy, and that was a key. And secondarily, they didn't have any spot where I'm like, they're in just no man's land right now. That's the best news for Florida State. So you can argue on the gap, but Florida State football is still a better program than they were since the spring portal opened. That's the best news. Next, how do you feel about Florida State's 26th class so far? I want to make a couple comments on this. The other day on the Portal podcast that I do every day, covering the transfer portal, recruiting and NIL here on the Locked On Network. I had John Garcia Jr., national recruiting analyst for Rivals on. We talked about the disaster that was the Cameron Brooks situation. Just like with the portal, you got to hit when you've got an inside opportunity. Cameron Brooks was from 30 minutes away. That sucked. And he said, this isn't trending right. Like, this could end very badly for Florida State. They could make amends with the visits. They got a lot of guys coming in. And I agreed with John Garcia Jr. wholeheartedly. I still think everything is in front of them, but they're going to have to hit at a very high rate. The good news is 8 out of their 9 commitments, off the top of my head, are from the state of Florida. Love that. The bad news is the vast majority of them are taking visits to other schools in addition to Florida State. That's rough. But you went 2-10 last year. For the coaches that just got to Tallahassee, you signed up for it. Here it is, gentlemen. It's not going to be an easy road, but if you do things right, Florida State, I don't know how many times they had a top 5 class under Bowden. Pretty much every year from 1980 on, they were as good as it got with recruiting high end. You can get there again. The question is, can Norvell be the closer? That's the big thing for me. And I don't like answering a question with a question, but everything else there is in place. They've got some better recruiters on the staff now, better coaches, and they have playing time to sell. It's going to come down to Norvell. We'll see. All right. Final question before the big one overall. Can Florida State make a decent bowl game this year? And I'm not talking about just something like December 21st, but like, can they go 9-3 or something like that? Do you think there's any chance of that with the way they built so far in the portal? Or if you want, you can say, you could put a caveat. They can get there, Brian, if they add, and fire away if you want to say something about the portal. Maybe it's another receiver. Maybe you want to comment on safety, whatever it is. That's cool. For me, I think the only way they can make it to 9-3 in a pretty decent bowl game is if they didn't just hit it receiver. They got to hit a freaking home run. That doesn't mean like they break the bank, but whichever individual they come in is a team player, probably can play multiple spots. Like, let's, for instance, say he could play flanker or boundary. It's hard to find boundaries. Those are usually bigger receivers. And above all else, if the game plan for any particular weekend is to run the ball a little more, doesn't care, team guy. If the game plan is to throw to another guy because the matchup's better, doesn't care, team guy. They did a poor job of finding team chemistry last year in the portal, obviously. That's something I'm going to look at. Now, I may not know all the guys that Florida State brought in this year or any other year, but that's something I'm going to be looking for when I speak to contacts around the Florida State program or anybody else for that matter, any program. The portal can screw up your team chemistry. So for me, if Florida State's going to surprise myself and a lot of other prognosticators, chemistry with the final pieces to the portal will be very important. Now, I know we're not going to find out about that until August, more than likely. There could be a few exceptions, and if they happen earlier, it's probably bad news. But they need a few more key players. If they get them, why not? The schedule's not death row by any means. Notre Dame's off the schedule this year. Miami's at home. Yeah, I get it that you're going to play at Florida, but are they really that great? They've got a pretty good roster, but do you really trust Billy Napier? I don't. And finally, Florida State's still in the ACC. This isn't the Big Ten. How many teams are they going to play where they truly have a talent deficit? Miami will be better. Florida's roster is better than Florida State's, but it's not by a ton. After that, how many others? It's Clemson, okay. But overall, it's just not that difficult. It is possible to go 9-3, and yes, I know they play Alabama. If you want to chalk up that game to a loss, go ahead. But I still just don't think it's that difficult. Florida State has to stop shooting itself in the foot to win games. Part of that's roster building and all that stuff. But last year, that team, they got down on themselves. If they had a mistake, it just seems like it compounded almost every time. So, final question. Where do you think the Florida State program is with the portal? Are you comfortable with it? Do you like the direction that Mike Norvell and his staff are going? Comment away. I would love to hear your comments on the YouTube page for Locked On Seminoles. This is why I do this podcast. These are big box questions that are fun. And that relates to the question before, like, do you think they can go 9-3? Obviously, those two are very much correlated. Thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to learn all you can about Florida State's football and what's going on with the portal and recruiting and everything else that I can bring to you. I really enjoy it. So thank you very much. Please subscribe if you have not already. And please share this podcast. I want to get in front of as many Florida State fans as I can. And finally, give us a thumbs up and a 5-star on Apple and anywhere else you get your pods. Everybody have a good one. We'll see you again soon on Locked On Seminoles.